All right, we just finished up lines and some of the basics, super basics of AutoCAD. Back over to the Windows side, and let me fire up another blank document. Here we go. Now we're going to move on to the second icon. It's a polyline. Now a polyline is similar to the line, except line segments from the line command. I'm just going to draw a few lines here real quick. All right. For a line, each one of these segments of the line, each one is its own object. A polyline will group the multiple line segments together into a single object. So I'm going to click Polyline. I'm just going to come out here in outer space, really doesn't matter where, left click and release, drag in the direction that I want to go. Let's just input a line, let's create a somewhat similar shape. And once again, AutoCAD is going to assume that you'll continue drawing until you tell it that you're done. Now there are some options down at the bottom. We'll get to those in a moment, but for right now, I'm just going to create this shape. I'm done creating my polyline. I'll press return or hit the space bar. Now the difference is as I move my mouse over, you'll see that each one of these highlights individually. Each one of these segments, these are drawn with my line command. But if I hold my mouse here, all the segments line up. This kind of functionality to have these elements grouped together like this actually turns out to be very helpful in a lot of cases. So I'm going to select my objects, and I'm going to delete them, only so I can start everything over again, because I want to go a little more in depth. Select my polyline tool. AutoCAD is always going to ask me to specify a start point. So I'm going to click my start point. And at this point, I now have a few options. The main ones that I'm going to worry about right now, I'll show you here in a minute. I'm just going to come out to here and I will click left click on my mouse. And at this point, I can mix and match between arc segments and line segments. I can either come down here and I can actually click on this object here in the command window, or if you notice that there is the A that is highlighted, it's blue, whereas the rest of the word is black, and it's similar to all these other options. If I actually type A at the command prompt and push return, I'm now drawing an arc. And that arc segment is going to be tangent to the previous line segment that I drew. So I can actually move my cursor straight up like this, and it's drawing a full 180-degree arc segment. Left click. Let's say I'm done drawing arc segments and I want to go back and draw line segments. I can type L at the command prompt for a line, push the space bar, and now I'm drawing a line again. And I can come back down over to here and I can left click. And in order to close this off, even if I left click, now you notice how my cursor's got that green box around it right now. That's AutoCAD telling me that it will rubber band to the exact endpoint of that line, which will help close and create boundaries, and we'll get to the need for this a little later. Alternately, even if I left click right here, the polyline won't officially be closed until I actually tell it to close. It's a little funny, because you'll notice down here at the bottom, it says close. Well, I don't have to left click, I don't have to graphically close my polyline in order to close my polyline. I can type C at the command prompt, press return, and my polyline is closed. Alternately, I'll draw another polyline almost exactly like it. Left click. Oh, let me back up a minute. I just pushed escape to cancel out of this. The Windows shortcut command for a polyline is PL at the command line and push return. I recommend using the shortcut keys on the keyboard because it allows you to maintain your visual focus where your cursor is. You don't have to move your mouse up over here, click on something else. You don't have to move your mouse down here to click on objects or options in the command line. You can keep your eyes focused where your cursor is. So I'm going to left click and release, drag off a distance, left click and release. There's my first line segment. I want to move to my arc mode, so I will type A, push a space bar, move up some distance, left click and release. I'm done with my arc. I'm going to go back to line mode, so L, spacebar, move my mouse over here. Yeah, it's more or less sort of kind of the same. Left click and release. Now at this point, I could be done with my polyline command if I so chose, and I can either push a spacebar, push return, or even push escape and cancel out the command either way. So I can have an open polyline, or I can have a closed polyline. So those are the basics, some of the basics of the polyline command. Now one of the things that I want to show you now is how to make edits. That needs to go away. So if I highlight my object, left click, I'm going to select on that. You'll notice that I have a square, but then I have a little rectangle in the middle of my arc, and I have a square at this end vertex, a little rectangle in the middle of this segment, a blue square at this vertex, and so on. These are grips, and they allow me to modify this shape. And it doesn't matter if it's closed or if it's open, you'll still more or less get the same thing. And click escape a couple times to clear out my selection. Now, I've got everything crowded over on the left-hand side of my screen. If I want to change that, if I want to shift and move around, if I want to pan my way through the AutoCAD screen, you don't use the space bar for that like you would in Illustrator or Photoshop. You hold down your scroll wheel, your scroll wheel, you hold it down, and as you move your mouse to the right, then that reorients the view, and when you're done with that, you release the scroll wheel, and you're done with the pan command. Also, with your scroll wheel, if you scroll up, you will zoom in. If you scroll down, you will zoom out. So you can just zoom in and zoom out very easily, very fluidly. Hold down the scroll wheel to pan through the drawing. So that's some basics of navigation. Now I want to focus on this top shape. So I'm going to highlight my object, and I have an option here. I'm going to choose this guy first. You notice I haven't clicked anything, but I have the option. I can actually move my mouse over to this little menu. I can stretch the vertex, I can add a vertex, or I can remove the vertex. And right now, I want to stretch the vertex, so I can either click stretch a vertex, or because it's the top item in the list, I can left click at this point, and I'm instantly stretching the vertex. And it doesn't have to be orthogonal. I can stretch it in any direction, any distance I want to. I can make things backwards. And you'll notice as I move my mouse around, Autodesk or AutoCAD is trying to give me information it thinks would be helpful to this edit. It's showing the length of the line. It's showing the radius of the circle. It's showing the angle that I'm changing this line segment by. So it's trying to be helpful in all this information. And I'm just going to move this line up a bit. Left click and I'm done. Alternately, if I hold my mouse and come down to add vertex, then it will add another segment to this line. And you'll notice my little green dashed line that came back in because AutoCAD is trying to be helpful by rubber banding us to an orthogonal cursor movement. Likewise, if I hold my mouse over the vertex, I can come down and say remove vertex, and I can pull the vertex out if I wanted to do it that way. I can also add a vertex here in the middle. You see it says add to vertex. Now what this doesn't do is it doesn't allow me to easily line up with that point there. That's a different command. But you'll notice I'm lined up right after I said that. I will show you that here in a moment. There are settings that control this. I'll get to that. Left click and I'm done. I can remove a vertex if I want to. I'm going to come back here in the middle. You can see I can stretch, which means that I'm going to move this entire segment. Stretch, and you can see I'm moving this entire segment of the polyline. And it doesn't have to be constrained by anything. I will click escape. Hold my mouse over there. I can convert this straight line into an arc. And if I want to change this, if I want to change my arc again, just like over on this arc segment, click on the middle, left click, and I can adjust the arc this way if I want. I can also grab a hold of this endpoint and I can adjust my arc like that. So there are a number of ways I can make these modifications. I can even take an arc segment and I can convert it back into a line. And let's say that I didn't want to do that. Let's say that I wanted to leave this arc segment, or leave this as an arc, but I wanted to straighten that one out. Well, that is Control and Z is your undo. It's a standard Windows command. I'm kind of up at the top of the screen. I want to pan down a little bit. Highlight my object. Find that grip in the middle. Hold my mouse over it, and then don't click anything yet. And I come down, convert to line. So those are some of the basics of polylines. Let's zoom back out so I can see everything. So that's polylines.